And now, the best 60-ish seconds of your week. And it's truly fall because America's pastime now turns to postseason play as the regular season comes to an end this week. And my beloved Phillies, for those of you that might be from eastern Pennsylvania, are hanging on for dear life. Whether or not they make the playoffs for the first time in a decade remains to be seen. They're doing everything they possibly can to blow it. This has reminiscences of 1964. If you're as old as I am, you remember that debacle. I remember crying myself to sleep, literally, as a little kid, when the Phillies blew a 9-game lead that year and ended up not being in the postseason play, because in those days they didn't have any of this playoff stuff. They either won the pennant or you went home. The Phillies went home that year. I've got a few World Series tickets from 1964, by the way. They didn't seem to have much value then. Maybe they do now. But we'll have to wait and see whether or not they actually can eke out a playoff spot. They had an 18-game over 500 record just a couple of weeks ago. Now they're skating at about 10 above. Today, as we're taping this, are in a doubleheader with the Washington Nationals, a team they have better be able to beat, but we'll see. It's going to be a lot of fun. The postseason is always great, and the season has been marked with some real milestones. Obviously, Aaron Judge taking over the American League lead in home runs all time is very significant. New York Yankees fans, of course, loved Roger Maris. They now have a new hero, but the guy I really like to focus on this year is Albert Pujols, who thankfully hit the 700 career home run mark this season. A great tribute to him and to the game, because he was a clean player and, more than that, a fantastic human being. Just one of the really great folks to play the game of baseball. I'm still lamenting the fact that the Phillies didn't pick him up when they could have, but the St. Louis Cardinals have been blessed to have him back there for the conclusion of his magnificent career. Not only one of the all-time greats on the field, but truly one of the all-time greats off. So maybe we'll chat a little bit about sports during the fall as a little bit of a break to politics. And moving on to our favorite subject, American politics, I still believe that the red wave is coming. Whether or not it's a tsunami, we'll have to wait and see. But the Republicans are doing the right things on these election campaigns. You know, historically and traditionally, the House races have been decided largely on the mood of the national electorate, with local candidates plugging in local issues, local personalities, local campaigns in the context of an overarching national theme. Senate races decided much more on the strength of the individual candidates and their campaigns. But when Republicans have been very successful at congressional overtakes, it happened in the context of a national mood which was captured by the Republicans with specific plans to govern once they took the majority. Because people get a little tired of hearing this and that about the opposition. They ultimately want to know, what will you do for us? What will you do for me if you're ultimately elected? And we all remember 1994 when the Republicans took back the House after decades of Democrat domination there. It was Newt Gingrich and his contract with America that made it happen. And Kevin McCarthy and his folks have rolled out, right here in Pennsylvania, the Commitment with America, a plan very similar to what the Republicans rolled out in 1994, which gives congressional candidates a overarching strategy from which to work. It's a great plan. It goes right to the heart of what Americans are really talking about at their dinner tables and across the lunch tables at work. They're talking about the economy and reinvigorating our national economy, dealing with inflation, helping our national energy production so that we're not dependent upon foreign energy and folks that hate us to provide our energy needs, and a commitment to a prosperous future for America. And that is a great way to run congressional campaigns nationally. The Republicans are off and running. Watch what happens in some of these key swing races right here in Pennsylvania and throughout the country. There aren't that many of them, so they're going to be really relatively easy to watch as the Republicans look to take back control of the United States House of Representatives. And as the nation watches who will take over the control of the United States Senate, which is currently split 50-50 with the tie-breaking vote going to Vice President Harris, one of the races being most closely watched is right here in my home state of Pennsylvania. And Dr. Mehmet Oz is surging in the polls, largely because John Fetterman has yet to answer some very, very critical questions about his health and about his personal finances and about his history and some of the remarks that he's made and actions he's taken, specifically on the issue of crime. The Fetterman campaign tried very, very hard early on to define Mehmet Oz in negative ways, focusing on the fact that he had just moved into Pennsylvania. They called him a carpetbagger, a New Jersey resident, et cetera, et cetera. Now they've morphed that into the old tried and true anti-rich guy, anti-corporate America, anti-this, anti-that campaign. It's not working for them, particularly when John Fetterman has some real serious issues to deal with, some of which every Pennsylvanian prays will happily resolve themselves, most notably the issues surrounding his health. But as every newspaper in the state now is pointing out, people have a right to know exactly what the situation is with John Fetterman's health. Dr. Oz produced all of his medical records for the media this week, and John Fetterman ought to do the same. But there are 5 weeks remaining in that campaign. There's a lot yet to be discussed. They won't get to a debate, unfortunately, until very late in the campaign, after a lot of votes have already been cast. But there's going to be a lot of discussion about John Fetterman's taxes, about John Fetterman's health, about John Fetterman's views on crime and delinquency, and those will be ultimately the things that shape this race. I think it looks very good for Dr. Oz. And I can't help but let go of a couple of Joe Biden statements. One made a little while ago, but very, very significant in this week when Hurricane Ian hit southern Florida and the west coast of Florida in particular with such ferocity. We remember a few months back, Joe Biden telling us that the thing you can do to prepare for a hurricane is get vaccinated, because vaccinations are the key to hurricane preparation, but not to be outdone with that. More recently, he was at a press function and couldn't remember the fact that Congresswoman Walorski from Indiana had sadly and tragically been killed in an automobile accident a couple of months ago. He was looking for her at the event, calling her out by name. This is the stuff that embarrasses America on the world stage, and certainly should on the domestic one. Finally, my native Brazil has an election on Sunday, and Jair Bolsonaro is up for re-election. The liberal media, both in the United States and Brazil, has been predicting his political demise, but my friends there tell me it actually looks pretty good for him. So please, say a prayer for the people of Brazil and for the election on Sunday tomorrow. It's going to be very, very significant, because if Brazil goes back to the communist left, and that's what we're talking about, that Lula da Silva, a true communist, a convicted felon running for president against Jair Bolsonaro, if he's able to take over that nation, basically all of Latin America falls with it, because there are already so many leftist governments in place there. So please say a prayer, because for now, that is the best 60-ish seconds of your week.